How do you deal with assholes at tastings? I'm Daniel Whittington, Chancellor of Wizard Academy and Whiskey Marketing School, and this is a whiskey that was a gift of Jeff and Dee Timmy, and soon to be level 1 whiskey sommeliers, but great advocates in the community, great human beings, or not soon to be, just were. Sorry, I said soon to be, but they brought this bottle at their level 1. This is where my head's at right now. Okay. And they were so thoughtful. They always are when they bring gifts. They brought this bottle, and then they had more than one, so they gave me a sample of this bottle so I could try the whiskey without opening the bottle. I mean, what do you even say to that kind of kindness? All right. How many times have you either run a tasting, been to a tasting, given a tour, or been on a whiskey tour or any kind of whiskey event where someone in the group wants to hog the limelight and run the show, right? And they do it by either, I have a question, and then they make statements instead of questions and give a speech about what they know, or they correct the tour guide was like, well, actually, and they're one of those people where it's like, well, actually, what really happens in a mash tun, and yeah, it's infuriating. Speaking as someone who has encountered hundreds of these people. Hundreds. So I want you to remember something that it took me a while to get to, because when I first started encountering this kind of thing in the last 12 years, I was not in a great place. So my reaction to it was a little different than it is now. So benefit from my experience on this one. Skip the rough part of the journey. All humans have two real driving needs: to be seen and to belong. To be known and to belong. That's really the two most important ones, right? And true love, whatever you qualify that as being, is the most extreme version of belonging and being seen, right? But we want this even outside of romantic love. We want this in a community. We want to belong. And we want this group to see us for who we are and what value we bring and what matters. 80% also to have an impact, but that's a tangential thing. 80% of the people that do this in a tasting or a tour or an event, easily 80%, and it is the most of them, I need you to remember, most of the people who end up in this role in a tasting or an event, they just want those two things. They don't hate you, they're not being an asshole, they're not trying to be rude, they just want to be seen, and they want to belong. Now, think of it this way. You're one of us. You're a whiskey nerd. You know more about whiskey than most of the tour guides at generic big brand tours. And you go to Scotland and you sign up for the more expensive tour where you get behind the scenes access. And you're like, this is going to be great. I love fill in the blank, Lagavulin, Bunnahabhain, Coolila. I love Islay Distilleries, and I'm going to get the behind-the-scenes tour. And then the tour guide walks in, and they begin to sort of kind of read from a script in their head that they've done like Disneyland for day after day after day. And they start to explain barley and peat and how fermentation works. And a part of your brain, admit it, is going like, son of a... How do I explain to these people, I already know these things and this is not what I'm here for. I want a real interesting tour about the whiskey, right? And so you speak up and you're like, oh yeah, and you ask questions that are like really intricate questions about fermentation or barley in the hopes that, why? Why do you do this? Most of us don't do this so that we can show the whole group how much we know. Most of us do this to let the group know, or to let the guide know, I want to know more. I want you to get past the surface level stuff, right? And so that's a whole category of people. And if the tour guides know what they're doing and they know what they're talking about, they will often go, oh, hey, heck yeah, we can give you a whole different tour. And if you're in the craft industry and you talk like this, you will find yourself behind the doors of rooms you shouldn't be in, drinking samples from things you shouldn't know about. It's amazing, right? Now, that doesn't often happen at Jameson because a lot of the times they're just hiring random tour guides and they have a speech and this is what they give. But that's a real thing. And so when you're on the receiving end of it, I need you to give the benefit of the doubt and remember that most people just want to be seen. I have found that the best thing to do with those people is to do what it is they're asking without actually asking it. It's to honor them, make them feel seen, validate their knowledge. If you do that and you change them from fighting to be seen, fighting to be heard, to having been seen and having been heard, almost all the time, those people relax, calm down, and sort of enjoy the journey. And often, if you make them a part of the tour, we're like, holy, you know a lot about fermentation. You might know more than me about fermentation than what so here's a couple of things that I will do. I will kind of try to wrap that person into part of the tour or the tasting. And I'll sort of start to treat the rest of the room as us and them. And I'll be like, so, single malts. What single malts? Not you, you're not allowed to talk because you already know the answer to this question. Everyone else who doesn't know the answer to this question, what are single malts? And they go, and you're like, okay, tell them what single malts are. And then you just sort of wrap people in and you give them a platform, you make them feel seen, you give them validation. And that is enough for them to transition almost all the time into kindness and contribution, and they will love you and they'll feel like they belong in this group and in this community because you just made them feel seen, made them feel heard. Now, every once in a while, someone like this will speak up. And they are also in the positive category. They want to feel seen, they want to be heard, but they're wrong. Oh God, what do you do with that? How do you not publicly shame someone who is just trying to be engaged and involved and wants to feel seen and heard? How do you not publicly embarrass them with wrong knowledge? And the answer is just be kind and call it out gently, but don't call it out directly. I'm going to give you an example. Everyone who's worked in the whiskey industry in America, in craft, everyone, there are no exceptions. This is one of those where there are no exceptions. If you are in the industry, you have had some consumer at some event, somewhere, say, well, you could only make bourbon in Kentucky. Everyone's heard it. So what do you do when if someone's being a jerk, yeah, but if someone says something like, well, you can only make bourbon in Kentucky, so how are you guys calling your Texas whiskey bourbon, right? And you make the call in the moment. This is an honest question. This is someone who's trying to demonstrate knowledge. They want to be engaged. They're not trying to be a jerk. They're not trying to put you in your place. They're just asking questions, and they think they know something. So out of kindness, what can you do to that person? I have two responses, and I recommend a third is better. My first response is to lean down and say, okay, here's the thing. Everybody, you can make bourbon anywhere in America, but Kentucky doesn't know that. So don't tell them because it might hurt their feelings. And then everyone laughs and you're like, yeah, actually, Kentucky, is, and you carry on the conversation, right? The other one is, and this one's if people are having a little bit more fun, then I'll say some version of like, that's what Big Brother Kentucky wants you to believe. But the reality is you can make bourbon anywhere in America as long as it meets the qualifications of bourbon. Now, there's a gentler one where you don't have an affinity and you don't know these people, but it's still kind of kind, and it is to honor the intent of the question, even if it's incorrect factually, and you can do something like this. Well, what is true is that bourbon originated in Kentucky as far as we know, and there's a lot of reasons for that. That Kentucky is the birthplace of bourbon, and it will be, and it will forever hold that honor. But the laws specify that bourbon is an American product that can be made anywhere in America as long as it meets the specifications of bourbon, new oak, corn dominant, and so on. And then I'll usually finish with, but don't tell Kentucky that, because they don't know. Something to take the edge off and basically honor the person. Yeah, Kentucky is important for these reasons, and then sort of take the energy back and be like, this is a common misconception. This is not you being wrong. And if you're gentle about it, people tend to accept that. I'm going to give you, okay, what if they don't have good intentions? What if they are being an asshole? Or what if they're just being so oblivious that what they say comes across as flagrantly offensive? All right, that's a different one. Okay, so First, let's talk about Ballechin. Ballechin is Edredor Distillery, which is owned by the Signatory Group, or the family. It's that also owns a Signatory. This is a specific. Ballechin is the heavily peated edition of Edredauer, and it was actually early on, 2006, that they started doing the peated version. And when Ian Henderson, I think, was doing the previous, and they started releasing peated Edredauer. So Ballechin was actually the name of a neighboring distillery at one point that then got roped into the Edredauer production. And it's one of the few truly heavily peated Highland single malts. And I've never really loved Edredauer. It's got a flavor note in there of like a slight black licorice note that always throws me. But I've always liked Ballechin, ironically, for some of the same reasons, because for some reason when that note shows up in peat smoke, I'm fine with it. In the nose, dark, like black edged charred plum. And this is Burgundy Cask matured, 12 years old. This has cigar box, or like incense burner wood, sandalwood, cigar box, cedar wood, incense going. This is wooden and smoky and funky. Oh man, that is good. Jeff, D, that is good. That is meaty and burnt ends and barbecue, but also dark fig jam and honey and good Lord, that is rich. Yes. Okay. Candied. The aftertaste is all candy instead of ash and smoke. And I love it. Still smoky, still burnt, still heavy. And very rich. Let's add some water into that and see what we get. Okay, what do you do when people are assholes? This is where you need to be honest with yourself. Very often, your ego will tell you this person's an asshole, and you need to take a step back and calm down. But every once in a while, someone in the group is attempting to put you in your place and establish dominance. And this happens way more for the women that I know in the whiskey industry than it does for the men. As a matter of fact, I would argue it's almost verging on common for the women I know in the whiskey industry, whereas for the men that I know in the whiskey industry, it's more of a rare event. So when you find somebody who's being truly insulting, especially to the women in the whiskey industry, they also break into categories. One, disdain and asshole, and the other, completely oblivious but infuriatingly insulting. And I think both of them have some version of a response that I feel is fair, because I wouldn't go around like crusading with this, but if they throw their hat in the ring, then game's on at that point. Gloves come off. You have presented yourself as you want to establish a voice in the group, and you are either an asshole or you are blatantly wrong and offensive. Guess what? New plan. For me, I do it very, very specifically. I don't answer the question in a general way, and I'm not typically, when you answer someone's general question in the first way I said before I drank the whiskey, if someone says bourbon can only be made in Kentucky, and you sort of answer it in a general vague sense, well, actually, there's a lot of them, then you're not really aiming at them and you're taking the energy off of them. And that's the kind way to do it. And if you want to be the kind person, then stay the kind person. But in the instance where someone is just being a little too punchy and I sort of want to establish, hang on a second, shut up. Then I stop being general and I start being specific. And so I will stop cold turkey in the middle of an event and look at them and say, no, that's wrong. I don't know where you heard it, but wherever you heard it from was wrong. And if you're not sure, feel free to Google it right now. I'll wait. I can explain it if you want me to. If I'm that direct, that usually ends it for the rest of the tasting. Right? Now, I didn't call them an idiot. I didn't say you're stupid. I just dropped a line in the sand so strong that very rarely are people comfortable crossing it again. I'm pausing. This is a long pause. There's a reason. I used to do this more because I wasn't healthy. And I was in a bad mental space. And it was an easy way for me to just have no patience for someone and just be like, no, screw you. I'm cutting you off at the knees and we're done here. I'm in a better place now, I think. And I've got a lot more grace for things like this in my life. And so now when I do this kind of thing, it is rare. And I will tell you when I bring it out. It is when I feel that the sense of safety in the group is at risk, right? If I'm teaching a class or I'm giving a tour or I'm doing a tasting, that's a protected space. And I work really hard to protect that space. And if there's an asshole in the room, very quickly my goal is to basically neuter them so that this space remains a protected space. Because if you give them room, they will dominate the entire conversation and then no one else will have an experience. And that's infuriating. And so I will kind of put them in their place very aggressively. And it's not because I'm trying to shame them or trying to put them in their place in that way. It's because I'm trying to establish, no, step back and shut up. This is a protected space and we need this environment to be a safe space for all of our people. And you are threatening that space. So I used to interact because I was pissed off at this person. Now I tend to react when I feel I'm protective of a person or a space. And that's when you get a really aggressive Daniel Whittington. Very decisive, shall we say. Every once in a while, I will absolutely shame someone in public for saying something truly absurd. Where I'm just like, I need this moment to land in your head so strong that you never even consider saying something like this in public ever again. I was not in the room. I had a friend in our whiskey community, a woman, have a person in a level of leadership ask them on the tour as a blender if they thought that their time of the month influenced their ability to blend good whiskey. I wasn't in the room. It's probably a good thing. If I had been in the room, I would have stopped the whole room, grabbed that person, focused and said, everybody shut up, hang on a second. I need you to repeat yourself. Because is it just me or did you just ask if menstruation affects whiskey tasting? And that because of that, maybe women can't blend whiskey if they're on their period. Is that what you asked? Clarify. And I would have gone so far down that person would have never forgotten that moment for the rest of their life. But it should be because it's a stupid question. And that's when I lose patience and that's when I get really aggressive. But it's always about protecting and safety. In your world, that's your line. Is what I'm doing because my ego's threatened, or is what I'm doing because I am protecting the people and the thing in the moment that I care about? And that really is only up for you to know. A little water on this whiskey makes it more musty, more wooden, more smoke, and a little less fruit. On the palate, oh, it's way more like toasted pastry, fruit, and jam. This is a beautiful whiskey. What a gift. Thank you, guys. Cheers to you. I hope that was helpful. I'm really glad you're here. If you believe that whiskey bourbon is only made in Kentucky, you should probably like and subscribe to this channel, and we will slowly fix you. I will try to fix you. Like and subscribe.